At its fundamental core, news is tell me something interesting I didn't know. And that's as good a definition of news as I can offer. I started work on what became the Wall Street Journal Online in 1994. And even then, it was pretty apparent to a lot of us that digital really was going to transform the business of journalism and that digital was going to be the future. For a long time, everybody thought the Holy Grail was the ultimate customized newspaper, the daily me. I thought as this trend was taking shape, and I continue to think that excessive personalization is a rabbit hole. What ends up happening is you never discover anything that you didn't know ahead of time you'd be interested in. And instead, your worldview gets narrower and narrower. It ultimately leads people to being dissatisfied with the news that they're getting because they're just constantly being fed the same content and the same kind of content. So SmartNews deliberately set out to be a news discovery tool rather than a news customization tool. And one of the great charms of SmartNews for me is I'm constantly discovering things I didn't know I'd be interested in, but I really am interested in. And ironically enough, if you go back to the pre-digital era and ask yourself in the newspaper age, what made a good newspaper? And the answer to that was always there was something for everyone. You were discovering things through a process of serendipity. That story on page A8 that you stumbled across that you didn't know you'd be interested in but turned out to be interested in. Those were the kinds of things that made newspapers great back when newspapers were great. One of my titles at SmartNews is Chief Journalist, and that isn't because I'm making editorial decisions about what stories go in or where they get played, but it means that I get to work with the engineers to help make the algorithm journalistically smarter. We take in millions of URLs and other social signals a day, and we're looking at those stories for things like how widely a story is being shared, how rapidly it's being shared, understanding that this is a story about something important, and thus it gets weighted more heavily than a lighter story in terms of where it gets placed in the app. All those things are things that machines are really good at and can do very, very quickly. Here's what I fear, that as journalism becomes more and more fragmented and becomes more and more niche-oriented, the concept of the well-informed person goes away. My greatest hope is the flip side of that coin. As journalism evolves, as new delivery mechanisms evolve, that the end product is a more informed person and a more informed populace, because I think that an informed populace is the critical element to a successful, thriving democracy.